to Redacted Tonight. This is the comedy show where Americans in America covering American news are called foreign agents.
Now, Lee Camp might have been referring to himself. After all, he does work for a Russian news outlet. However, his word sadly could also have been in reference to my friend journalist Marzieh Hashemi, who is a U.S. citizen, was in the U.S. to cover U.S. news, following up on the Black Lives Matter story and some of the mysterious deaths of Black Lives Matter activists, and was kidnapped by the U.S. government from the St. Louis International Airport and renditioned to a D.C. prison where she remained for 11 days, including being put into solitary confinement. What was Marzieh's crime? Being a U.S. journalist inside the U.S., covering U.S. news, and, like Lee, working for a foreign news agency. Marzieh is the face and voice of English language press TV that broadcasts to the world from Tehran, Iran. I guess you could say that a real crime was meeting in the U.S. and falling in love with an Iranian, having 3 children with him, living and working in Iran after a freak car accident in the U.S. that killed her husband while she was just having her 3rd child, a baby boy. With the love of her husband's family, she was able to raise her children and work at Press TV, which as a journalism student was her dream job. That was Marzieh's crime. And since her communications, now we know, were being monitored, perhaps the authorities also knew that my last conversation with Marzieh before these sordid events was her reminder to me to send her the information about Anarchapulco because she wanted to cover your and our movement for a new documentary that she wanted to make. I was so shocked by the news of her solitary confinement, which has been deemed torture by international bodies, that I hurt my back and ended up on the floor where I am still resigned to do my back exercises until I'm 100%. But then, as Marzieh's ordeal was prolonged, I had to decide whether or not I was going to make a trip that would take me into the U.S. for a layover. I decided after consulting with my mom, no, that's not exactly what I think I want to do. So imagine it's bad enough that the U.S. routinely kidnaps the citizens of other countries, renders them for torture to other countries, and sometimes they're never seen again. And then remember, it was Barack Obama who sought and obtained permission from the much discredited FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, to kill U.S. citizens on U.S. soil. In the war-driven hysteria being pumped up by the war makers, the warmongers inside the U.S. government and its complicit media, including certain alternative media outlets, but of course, not any of the ones that are at Anarchapulco, it's actually dangerous for some U.S. citizens to return to the U.S., even for a layover. But I'm not telling you anarchists at Anarchapulco anything that you don't already know. And that's why you're here. When I leave Asia for good, I might just have to break all of my chains and move to Acapulco, where more enlightened compatriots are. For those of you for whom this is your first Anarchapulco visit, I hope that your life has been changed by the information and new friends and new perspectives that you found here. Anarchapulco 2018 was a life-changing event for me. I have now added anarchism to my list of political systems that my political science students should know and have an open mind about. I've also confirmed for myself and my students that Greg Caton's psychopathocracy is a concept that certainly applies to the United States leadership and to those who unquestioningly carry out their orders, with Abu Ghraib being a prime example. But we have so many more examples of their psychopathy with the structural violence that the U.S. has normalized into a global cultural violence. But for me, U.S. wars and their attendant direct structural and cultural violence will never be normalized. And until my last breath, I will struggle against the destruction, theft, marginalization that I see around me. I have always lived that no is the most powerful word in politics, because it is only when we say no to what is that we can begin to envision what can be. Which is why I know you all are so important, because you all have a different vision for our future. You already are saying no to what is. You are already seeking something better for humanity and planet Earth. A better future that includes everyone, that excludes no one, except maybe the perpetrators of violence on others who must answer for their behavior. While listening to the presentations, I'm sure you've understood also that the Anarchapulcoists are trying to create a more just U.S. and a more just world. And I think you're on to a solution. Last year, I also mentioned the importance of direct democracy to our creation of a new way of engaging with each other. Direct democracy allows everyone to participate in the decision-making process that creates the rules and norms that govern us. It is through the practice of direct democracy, I believe, that we can practically approach the voluntarist ideal. Because in direct democracy, I surrender my sovereignty to no one. I am the one who can best represent myself. And parliament after parliament around the world, and Congress after Congress in the Americas, we have seen the failure of indirect democracy. Republics, including people's republics, that require us to surrender our sovereignty to others and then go back to those same others and beg them for service. Switzerland is not the only direct democracy in the world. Well, it is now, because Barack Obama bombed Africa's direct democracy, and that is the Green Libya, the Jamahiriya, back to the Stone Ages. Which leads me to believe that in some corners, it is actually thought that direct democracy is okay for Europeans, but for no one else. Now Europeans have seen the folly of increased centralization of authority and power in the EU and are voting to leave the EU, which is dominated by names and faces completely unknown to the average person in Europe. Nigel Farage now wants direct democracy for the UK. Ireland wants to return to direct democracy like it had in the 19th century. But these are things that you already know. Some of you saw long ago that all of the institutions in which we're taught to believe as Americans are right and just. But now we know the truth, and on the most solid foundation of the truth, we can build and recreate and improve the lot of humanity, not just destroy and kill it. So I count you as my leaders, and I'm recruiting followers. In the 1960s, the world was on fire with change. It was led in the beginning of that decade with the attitude toward peace of President Kennedy, who said that he wanted to tear the CIA into pieces and scatter them to the four winds. In short order, the next agent of change, Malcolm X, was murdered, and in the COINTELPRO papers, the FBI gloated that their plan had succeeded. In short order, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered, and his friend and champion and sure to be next president was also murdered, JFK's brother, Bobby Kennedy. The FBI and CIA rounded up the decade by murdering Black Panther Party member Fred Hampton as he slept. In each of these murders, local police departments helped the feds accomplish the dirty deeds. And Mario Savio, who gave us and the movement our charge, died in poverty. Y'all, we've got to do better this time. The past tells us that individuals inside the U.S. government will kill U.S. citizens when we are on the verge of transforming U.S. policy. Yes, they will kill us and they will kill our leaders. And so we've got to do a better job of protecting our leaders and our followers. And I'm charging you with that responsibility. Now is not the time for division and hatred. Anarchapulco is supposed to be our time for healing and recharging so we can go back out there and win this struggle for truth, justice, peace, and dignity. Marzier was to document our movement, and maybe we can make that happen in 2020. But what I did make happen this year is for my son and his true believing wife, Pam, to be here at Anarchapulco right now. I wanted to show my support by doing what I want each of you to do for Anarchapulco 2020. And that is each one, teach one, each one, bring one. Now, I almost brought Marzier and her documentary making skill set, but I definitely recruited 2 people to join you, even though I couldn't make it myself. But also, you should note that it is my leader who is here with you, because my son Coy first gave an anarchist flesh and bones to me. He declared himself an anarchist upon graduating from law school and me pressuring him to say what he's going to do with his life. He gasped and said, "Mom, I'm not going to practice law. The legal system in the U.S. is way too corrupt and is not even created for justice." And so he wrote a paper that was published by the Anarchist Library entitled An Anarchist Theory of Justice. So to wrap this up now and bring my son Coy, who chose to become a farmer, up on the stage, he teaches others in food-starved urban areas how to create organic soil and grow organic food. He wants to start an intentional community, and I'm pleased to share the stage with him and introduce to you my son, Coy McKinney, the almost lawyer.